Hi everyone, I'm Earl Garber, the President of the National Association of Conservation Districts. This presentation will be an interactive leadership and advocacy training made available to you. You're all leaders. By taking part in this presentation, you will become a better leader on the local level. Over the next hour, you'll hear from several of the NACD staff members on several subjects, such as political engagement and such as better media coverage out there. So we would hope that you would also participate in a follow-up that's available online to evaluate this presentation. Before the presentation starts, we want to take the opportunity to thank the Walton Family Foundation for partnering with us to make this available to you. So enjoy the session, and we would appreciate any feedback to the National Office.
Greetings, and welcome to NACD's Leadership and Advocacy Training. I'm Dave White, former Chief of NRCS and now Strategic Consultant with NACD. We're going to kick off this session on advocacy, talking about why it's important, and more importantly, why we are here and why it matters to us. All right, so let's get started. What does it mean to be an advocate? You know, we have supporters, people who support things, and we also have advocates. Advocates go beyond that which is convenient or economic. They fight for things. And it's important because you're the leaders, you're the voices of conservation. It's your responsibility, and if you don't do it, who will? Today we're going to cover about 8 different topics in advocacy, and we're going to touch on these in the next hour. But I really wanted to start off by kind of remembering why we are here. We got our start back in the dark days of the Dust Bowl, when this nation faced its worst environmental crisis it had ever seen. The haunting photographs of Dorothea Lange and the wonderful photographers of that era documented what the Dust Bowl was doing to the Great Plains of the United States. Hundreds of thousands were uprooted, dust pneumonia, other illnesses. By 1934, 100 million acres no longer had enough topsoil for crops. And it wasn't confined to the Midwest and the Great Plains. Down south, we had a severe erosion as King Cotton was taking its toll. But there were people who stepped forward, people like Hugh Hammond Bennett and the early leaders in conservation. And in 1933, the nation acted. President Roosevelt created the Soil Erosion Service with the stroke of a pen. 2 years later, Congress created, without a dissenting vote, the Soil Conservation Service. In 1994, it became the NRCS. Today, we have 11,000 employees and 2,800 field offices. But they did more than that back in the 30s. Roosevelt sent out a model law to create conservation districts. They felt that it was so important to have local input, local control, local guidance of a federal program. In honor of Hugh Hammond Bennett, Brown Creek became the first conservation district, and in 1946, NACD was founded. Today, 3,000 conservation districts, 17,000 elector-appointed officials, 7,000 employees spanning across our nation. And this vast network is so important because nearly 3/4 of the continental United States is in private ownership. And the fate of our environment, the quality of our environment, is completely dependent upon the quality of the decisions the men and women who own and operate that land make every single day. And yet, in the early years, it was not easy. There were many challenges in front of us, and many people opposed the formation of conservation districts. Just listen to this clip provided to us from West Virginia.
The conservation movement had spread across the United States, and it became apparent that there would be a need for a national organization representing the states, and it would have to be organized and more or less on a volunteer basis. When things were at a boiling point across the country, with the feeling that we didn't need soil conservation districts and they had to be outlawed.
We have accomplished a lot over the last several decades, and I would submit to you that today we face even greater challenges than they did in the early years. We're going to have 9 billion people on this planet. We're going to have 70 to 100% increases in food production. And how are we going to do that and still have clean air, clean water, abundant wildlife, and a healthy environment for all? And that is why it's so important for conservation districts and the officials and the employees to stand up and advocate for conservation. Who else will speak for the land?
I'm Jamie Robertson, Member Data Specialist at NACD, and I'm here to talk to you today about leadership expectations. Before we begin, please note I'll be referencing several exercises throughout this section. I encourage you to take the time to fill these out on your own. A key strength of the Conservation District movement is its nationwide scope informed by local conservation priorities. As you know, districts provide a wide variety of services to cooperators in a number of different settings, including urban areas, forested regions, and agricultural landscapes. Understandably, in each of these settings, the needs are different, and the locally led conservation process is what helps to identify and prioritize unique local resource needs on the landscape. Today's districts face a number of challenges, including a demand for services. We're often looking at more customers than time, more competition for local, state, and federal resources, and the need for innovative solutions. As a Conservation District official, you are a leader in your community. And as a leader, you have a responsibility to represent your constituents and to advocate for private lands conservation. As you'll see from this video, leaders are everywhere, and sometimes they're found in the places and situations you least expected.
How many of you are completely comfortable with calling yourselves a leader? See, I've asked that question all the way across the country, and everywhere I ask it, no matter where, there's always a huge portion of the audience that won't put up their hand. And I've come to realize that we have made leadership into something bigger than us. We made it into something beyond us. We made it about changing the world. And we've taken this title of leader and we treat it as if it's something that one day we're going to deserve. But to give it to ourselves right now means a level of arrogance or cockiness that we're not comfortable with. And I worry sometimes that we spend so much time celebrating amazing things that hardly anybody can do, that we've convinced ourselves that those are the only things we're celebrating. And we start to devalue the things that we can do every day. And we start to take moments where we truly are a leader, and we don't let ourselves take credit for it, and we don't let ourselves feel good about it. And I've been lucky enough over the last 10 years to work with some amazing people who have helped me redefine leadership in a way that I think has made me happier. And with my short time today, I just want to share with you the one story that is probably most responsible for that redefinition. I went to a school in a little school called Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. And on my last day there, a girl came up to me and she said, "I remember the first time that I met you." And then she told me a story that happened 4 years earlier. She said, "On my day before I started university, I was in the hotel room with my mom and my dad, and I was so scared and so convinced that I couldn't do this, that I wasn't ready for university, that I just burst into tears. And my mom and my dad were amazing. They were like, 'Look, we know you're scared, but let's just go tomorrow. Let's go to the first day, and if at any point you feel as if you can't do this, that's fine. Just tell us, we will take you home. We love you no matter what.'" And she said, so I went the next day and I was standing in line getting ready for registration, and I looked around and I just knew I couldn't do it. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I had to quit. And she says, I made that decision, and as soon as I made it, there was this incredible feeling of peace that came over me. And I turned to my mom and my dad to tell them that we needed to go home. And just at that moment, you came out of the Student Union building wearing the stupidest hat I have ever seen in my life. It was awesome. And you had a big sign promoting Shinorama, which is Students Fighting Cystic Fibrosis, a charity I've worked with for years. And you had a bucket full of lollipops. And you were walking along and you were handing the lollipops out to people in line and talking about Shinorama. And all of a sudden, you got to me and you just stopped and you stared. It was creepy. This girl right here knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then you looked at the guy next to me and you smiled and you reached in your bucket, you pulled out a lollipop and you held it out to him. And you said, "You need to give a lollipop to the beautiful woman standing next to you." And she said, "I have never seen anyone get more embarrassed faster in my life." He turned beet red and he wouldn't even look at me. He just kind of held the lollipop out like this. And I felt so bad for this dude that I took the lollipop. And as soon as I did, you got this incredibly severe look on your face and you looked at my mom and my dad and you said, "Look at that, look at that. First day away from home, and already she's taking candy from a stranger." And she said everybody lost it. 20 feet in every direction, everyone started to howl. And I know this is cheesy, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but in that moment when everyone was laughing, I knew that I shouldn't quit. I knew that I was where I was supposed to be, and I knew that I was home. And I haven't spoken to you once in the 4 years since that day, but I heard that you were leaving. And I had to come up and tell you that you've been an incredibly important person in my life, and I'm gonna miss you. Good luck. And she walks away, and I'm flattened. And she gets about 6 feet away, she turns around and smiles and goes, "You should probably know this too. I'm still dating that guy 4 years later." A year and a half after I moved to Toronto, I got an invitation to their wedding. Here's the kicker, I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that moment, and I've searched my memory banks because that is funny, and I should remember doing it, and I don't remember it. And that was such an eye-opening, transformative moment for me to think that maybe the biggest impact I'd ever had on anyone's life, a moment that had a woman walk up to a stranger 4 years later and say, "You've been an incredibly important person in my life," was a moment that I didn't even remember. How many of you guys have a lollipop moment, a moment where someone said something or did something that you feel fundamentally made your life better? All right. How many of you have told that person they did it? See, why not? We celebrate birthdays where all you have to do is not die for 365 days. And yet we let people who have made our lives better walk around without knowing it. And every single one of you has been the catalyst for a lollipop moment. You have made someone's life better by something that you said or that you did. And if you think you haven't, think about all the hands that didn't go back up when I asked that question. You're just one of the people who hasn't been told. But it is so scary to think of ourselves as that powerful. It can be frightening to think that we can matter that much to other people. Because as long as we make leadership something bigger than us, as long as we keep leadership something beyond us, as long as we make it about changing the world, we give ourselves an excuse not to expect it every day from ourselves and from each other. Marianne Williamson said, "Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that frightens us." And my call to action today is that we need to get over that. We need to get over our fear of how extraordinarily powerful we can be in each other's lives. We need to get over it so we can move beyond it. And our little brothers and our little sisters, and one day our kids, or our kids right now, can watch us start to value the impact we can have on each other's lives more than money and power and titles and influence. We need to redefine leadership as being about lollipop moments. How many of them we create, how many of them we acknowledge, how many of them we pay forward, and how many of them we say thank you for. Because we've made leadership about changing the world, and there is no world. There's only 6 billion understandings of it. And if you change one person's understanding of it, one person's understanding of what they're capable of, one person's understanding of how much people care about them, one person's understanding of how powerful an agent for change they can be in this world, you change the whole thing. And if we can understand leadership like that, I think if we can redefine leadership like that, I think we can change everything. And it's a simple idea, but I don't think it's a small one. And I want to thank you all so much for letting me share it with you today.
Now that we've had some time to reflect upon leadership, please complete the online survey by answering the following 3 questions shown on the screen. You will have 4 minutes to complete this exercise. If additional time is needed, you can go back at the end to complete your responses. On this slide, you'll see some of the key qualities demonstrated by effective boards and staff. While boards and staff work together toward common goals, they have distinctive roles in this process. The next exercise will help us think about these roles in relation to our own boards and staff. Again, you will have approximately 4 minutes to complete your responses.
Hi, I'm Laura Wood-Peterson, Director of Government Affairs. We're going to be talking about political engagement, why it's important, and tips for success. I'll also be referencing a few handouts that you may download after this presentation. In this section, we'll identify tips, tools, and techniques that help make the job of advocacy through political engagement easier for conservation district boards and associations. We're looking at us as a representative democracy. This means we're founded on the principles of electing officials and representing a group of people. When we talk about representing a group of people, we must be heard. To be heard, you must speak, and to speak well, you need to know your group's message. So how are we going to know what our message is? Here we have a group exercise, and in this exercise we'll consider position statements of your district and/or state association, and so please just take a few minutes to fill out your answers. Now that you've thought through your policy priorities, it's time to come up with a position statement. In order to create a position, we're going to look at the following topics in our handout. The first is educating your board and association on issues. Once you're knowledgeable on issues, you can start to build a consensus process. Building consensus will require many steps, and they must be consistent with your mission and values. Using handout 2, we outline the consensus-making process. In that handout, we go into greater detail on these topics, but here's kind of the gist of the issues that are highlighted. Understanding what it means to give consent. Clearly outline what needs to be decided. List all the concerns participants want their proposal to address. Test the waters, reach a final decision, and implement the decision. These are the steps in order to getting to a position. An example position statement that might come of this sort of process is outlined here. Our Soil Water Conservation District strongly believes America needs a farm bill. Farm bill conservation programs are vital to land and water stewardship at a time when American agriculture is under pressure to feed a growing world population. Now that we've developed a position and reached a consensus, it's time to get the word out. At NACD, we use a unique process, the Principal Legislative Contact process. Details on this process may be found in Handout 3, but the bottom line of this process is it's locally driven. By having a network where we can send information from the local level, through state association level, and then to the national level, and vice versa, national, state to local, if we have information for you to distribute, we use this network to engage more people by putting responsibility with a principal legislative contact, who then can help disperse it within their regions. The last point of political engagement is to stay informed. We have many resources available to you, including our e-resource, and we hope you find local outlets as well.
Hello, I'm John Larson, Chief Executive Officer of NACD. In this next section, we will continue the discussion on political advocacy and how we impact policy decisions. And then later, for more information, refer to handouts number 5 and number 6. Here are a few examples of how to develop relationships with your representatives and their staffs. You need to stay in contact. You need to get to know your local, state, and national policy makers on a personal level. The relationships that you build there are key. Stay in regular communication. That includes making sure that you're emailing and that you're calling and that you're reaching out to them. Make sure that you're clear when you actually have an ask of them, but don't make that your only communication. Build that relationship. Get to know their staff. Staff are often the ones who are really making the decisions behind the scenes. Go to town hall meetings and other events they attend. Again, build that relationship. Keep them informed and up to date on your priority issues. They will become a person with you. And finally, considering contributing or volunteering on a campaign. So how do we keep them informed? Use every tool possible. Email, phone, personal contact being great. But again, don't always just have a problem, have a solution. Tips for meeting with policymakers. Here are the do's. Make sure to schedule your appointment well in advance. And always be punctual for your meeting. It's good to dress appropriate for the occasion and prepare adequate materials, handouts, and other leave-behind materials well in advance. Additional tips for meeting with policymakers are to stay focused on your issue. Provide relevant, specific examples from the legislator's home district, and follow up after your meeting to answer any questions or unresolved issues. So here are the don'ts when meeting with policymakers. Don't show up late. 15 minutes means 15 minutes. Don't talk about personal experiences like a recent doctor's appointment. Do not wear what you would consider to be your work boots to a meeting with a policymaker. And don't bring all your friends and everyone you know to the meeting. Stay focused. So here are additional don'ts when meeting with policymakers. Don't get upset if you only meet with staff. They make lots of decisions. Don't wear out your welcome. And don't mix personal and professional agendas. Stay focused.
I'm Bethany Shively, NACD's Director of Communications. In this next section, we'll be focusing on shaping positive public opinion. As part of the discussion, we'll be asking each of you to complete an interactive exercise. Thanks for participating. Helping the public understand the importance of voluntary private lands conservation is one of our most important jobs. Most people we communicate with don't understand the topic as well as we do, since it's something that we breathe and live every day. But most people can understand the importance of clean water, clean air, and healthy soil. So we need to craft our message in a way that is simple, direct, and easy to embrace. One technique is the elevator speech. In most cases, we only have about 30 seconds to capture someone's interest. So it's important to practice your speech and make sure that it's personal, clear, and concise. An effective elevator speech should provide a unique statement about yourself, describe who you are and how you can help, explain your unique selling point, and give a call for action. What response do you want from the listener? Now it's your turn. Please take 5 minutes to write your own elevator speech. Use the online form, and NACD staff will be able to see your response in real time.
This is Dave Russell with the Brownfield Radio Network. Let's take just a few minutes and talk about some things when it comes to working with the media and getting the story that you're looking for. First of all, it's important to understand that you have a great story to tell, and there's no better way in communicating your story than through the media. From the radio to television, ag publications to newspapers, the media can help tell your story. Since I'm in radio and have a pretty good idea of who you are and what you do, I'm probably not going to need a lot of background information. But there may be reporters who really don't know who you are or what you do. So here's your opportunity to help educate those reporters. Let me mention, too, it's a good idea to get to know who the reporters are beforehand. You might invite them out to the district office for a coffee. Share with them who you are and how you can help them with soil and water conservation related stories. Ask them how you can help them tell the story. Find out what kind of deadline they have. How much advance notice do they prefer? Myself, I like to have enough time that I can plan to be at the event. It just makes for a much better story. If you're going to send out a news release or a media advisory, make sure that you include a contact person's name and phone number, just in case the reporter has some questions before the event or maybe has some follow-up questions when the event is over. Before your event, make sure your supervisors understand their talking points, which reporters are attending, who the audience is, and if you aren't sure, well, ask the reporter. Keep in mind, the reporter has a job to do. The easier you make it for them, the better the story. Oh, and if you see or hear a story that's not quite right, let the reporter know and offer someone to help them with the portion of the news story that maybe needs corrected. But at the same time, be nice about it. If you have questions, ask, and I'd certainly be more than happy to help any of you any way that I can.
And in the end, it's really all about the people. To meet the needs of protecting a global natural resource space and to provide the food, feed, fiber, and fuel for the future, it's going to take a coordinated and unified effort. It starts with us. We are the leaders.
For the days that come
that's it. And thank you for participating in NACD's Leadership and Advocacy Training. We hope you found it valuable. And don't forget to check the website for more information and tools. With that, I'll say goodbye, and thanks again.